Hi, everyone, and welcome back to Grief and Life as We Know It. We really hope you've had a beautiful summer, whether it was filled with love and laughter, quiet moments, chaos, adventure, or just a whole lot of doing nothing at all. Sometimes that's exactly what we need. We've had a little break, and now we're so happy to be back with more conversations, reflections, and stories to share with you.
Yes, and this is exciting. Right now, we're actually in the same room
We are.
for the first time ever on the same continent, breathing the same air.
Mhm.
So, yeah, it's honestly a little surreal, but very special.
Very special
Mhm.
and strange.
Yeah.
But finally, let's hope we get it right now with the technical stuff. But truly, it feels like the perfect time to reconnect. Not just with each other, but with you who are listening. I actually miss this.
Yeah.
Because no matter the season, life keeps unfolding, right? And grief, healing, love, and change, they don't take summer breaks.
No, they definitely don't. For some, I guess, summer can even be extra hard. Everyone's supposed to be so happy. Social media is full of sunsets, ice cream, family trips, and smiles. And that's not the reality for everyone.
So true. The light, the warmth, it can be a comfort, yes, but it can also highlight what's missing. For some, it's their first summer without someone they love, or maybe it's the 10th, but it still stinks. And the contrast between what you feel inside and what the world expects you to feel, that can be exhausting, especially during summer or holidays in general, I guess.
Yeah, because for some, I guess we can say that, I've been to Italy this summer, haven't had a family vacation for so long,
Yeah.
for 10 days, and maybe I did the exact same thing. Posted stories of gelato and boat trips and stuff while you guys were home dealing with sickness, so we even have some differences in
Hmm.
our life. But that's, I guess, how life is. Unfair in
It's
many
true.
ways.
Yeah.
But today's episode is a reflective one. I guess there's no surprise there, right? By now, you probably know how much we love digging into the layers of life, especially when it comes to grief and all the different shapes it can take. Today, we're talking about something that most of us know can happen, but that still somehow catches us off guard when it does. How quickly life can shift, how things can change in an instant, and sometimes whether we should be prepared for it or if that's even possible.
Yeah, because let's be honest, how do you prepare for something you can't fully imagine until it happens? I mean, a phone call in the middle of the night, a diagnosis, a breakup, an accident, even just a few unexpected words can change your plans, your view of the world, your identity. It's like you go from normal to not normal in seconds.
And suddenly your nervous system is on high alert. Your routines are gone, your old self, your roles, your dreams, your plans, they don't quite fit anymore. It's this invisible shift. And while the world keeps turning, you're kind of stuck between what was and what now is.
And no one hands you a map for that space. People might say, you'll figure it out, or you're strong. And maybe you will, maybe you are. But in that moment, you're just trying to breathe, to survive. And I guess that's what we want to talk about today. Not just how life can change suddenly, but what we do after, maybe. And how we can hold on, what we can learn, and how eventually we keep going. And I also have to ask, is it helpful to prepare for the worst? Maybe that's one of the big questions today.
Mhm.
Because the truth is, life can change in an instant for any of us. And this is a big one, though. So much can happen in a lifetime. And of course, we can't cover it all. And we don't know it all. And we don't have all the answers for sure. But I think most people can relate in some way. Because one minute everything feels stable, even ordinary, and the next it doesn't.
And when that happens, how do we cope? What do we hold on to? What shifts inside of us and what becomes clearer than ever before?
Yeah, and seriously, can we even prepare for that? Should we try? Is it helpful, or does it just make us anxious when things are good?
As we said, today we're diving into different kinds of grief, not just the kind that comes with death, but the grief that shows up in life's many unexpected changes. We'll talk about what we've seen and heard, and what we lived through, and what life has taught us so far.
Yeah. And we also received so many thoughtful messages from you listeners about your breakups, illness, trauma, or simply the grief of losing the life you thought you'd have. Even when it's not about death, it's still grief. And it's comforting to know that we're not alone in that.
Yes. And because there are so many phases of grief, we will definitely come back to this in other episodes too, I'm sure. But today we're sharing some reflections, our own, and a few we've heard from others. Real stories, honest thoughts, and some gentle ideas on how to keep going when life suddenly shifts.
And yes, we've read up a little as always, so there will be a touch of science too. And since we had a little summer break from podcasting, I will repeat this again. Remember, we are not experts. We're not here to tell anyone how to grieve the right way or how you are supposed to live your life or what to do in those situations. We're just two sisters talking about what life has shown us, hoping that maybe it resonates with you too, in all humbleness.
Mm-hmm. We share these conversations with all the humility in the world, and we're always open to hearing your reflections too. We're learning right alongside with you. And as we talked about, it's not just illness or death that can flip your life upside down. Sudden change can come in so many forms, and so can grief. So let's start there. A breakup, a divorce, someone walking out of your life when you least expect it, or being thrown into something you never imagined, like becoming a single parent from day one, like I did. Actually, when I think back, and this is my personal experience with this, next to the experience with moving to a different continent and seeing from a distance what illness and loss does to someone I love. I mean, when it comes to grief.
Yeah. But that changed everything for you back then. And it's strange in a way to look back and reflect over past experiences like that, right?
Yeah, it really is.
But I think a lot of people will relate to your story. I mean, the fact that you became a single mom in your early 20s, so young.
Yeah, I think some can. It did for sure change me. And even though I don't think anyone actually dreams of starting their parenting journey alone, I can for sure say that it did change me. Young, tired, and trying to figure it out. And at the same time, life just kept moving on around me as usual.
Mm.
People expect you to cope, to manage, but no one sees all the small silent adjustments you make every day just to hold things together.
Yeah, and that is the kind of grief, one that often goes unnoticed. And there's no warning, no time to brace yourself, and suddenly you're in a completely new reality. And all you can do maybe is learn how to live with it or inside it.
Yeah. And that's the hardest part. It's the sudden, all of a sudden in my case, I was pregnant and had to deal with it. And you don't get to gather strength or make a plan. It just happens sometimes, or, like I
Mm.
said, just happens. Whether it's the grief of a lost dream, or the weight of loneliness, financial stress, or just trying to find your way again, it demands everything from you at that moment.
For sure, it does. It's consuming when you're in the middle of it. And let's be real, I just have to say, it's not our personal lives either. Now we're talking about the many phases of grief. I mean, the world around us is full of these unpredictable shifts. Look at what we're living through today: wars, global instability, senseless violence, economic pressure. People are grieving, afraid, overwhelmed, even when the pain isn't happening directly to them. it still settles in your body. It changes how we feel about the future, I guess you can say.
Yeah. It creates this deep uncertainty, like nothing is really solid anymore. And when that happens, it's so easy to lose your sense of stability and your footing.
But maybe that's also why conversations like this matter, because while we can't stop sudden change, we can talk about what it does to us. We can make space for the confusion, the fear, the grief, and we can remind each other that we're not alone in any of it. And most importantly, there is always hope, always. Even if it feels far away, it's still there. We have to believe that.
We have to.
So, since we're talking about how life can suddenly change, and you already mentioned it, I was wondering if you'd be open to sharing a bit about your experience of becoming a single mom. I mean, that was a big one and a life changing experience for you back then, and you were really young too.
Yeah, I can definitely talk more about it for sure. It is strange because when I look back now, it almost feels like it happened to somebody else, like a younger version of me. I sometimes don't fully recognize or remember in a way. I changed in so many ways. A lot of things has happened after, good things and good changes.
For sure.
But yes, I became a single mom basically from day one. It's a long story and I don't feel comfortable sharing it all, but becoming a single mom is not something you usually plan for. I mean, that's okay too, but you know what I mean.
Mhm.
And even though I had support around me, it was heavy at times because it was so new and unexpected. And there's this constant pressure, like every decision, every sleepless night, thinking, can I do this? Am I enough? How will the future look like? And every financial worry as well. It was all on me. You don't get to collapse, you just keep going in a way.
Hmm. And that is such a huge weight to carry, really, especially when you're still figuring out who you are, also, maybe. I mean, you were quite young, also.
I was a student
You
living in
were.
Oslo. Just finished my last year actually. But yeah, and I think that's what people often miss. Yes, I had this beautiful little person to take care of, and I loved her more than anything. But I also lost a version of my own life in the process, which I also feel like it's important to say that that happens for everyone, even if you're a single mom or not, because you do change. It's kind of like the before and after.
Yeah.
So when I reflect over this now and look back, I can see that there was grief there too. It feels super touchy for me to talk about because I can't say enough how thankful and grateful I am for it happening now. Uh, she was made for me, and me and her will always have a special bond. But when you become pregnant so young and unprepared and out of the blue, you don't have that white picket fence and a happy wedding photo hanging on the wall. It feels a little different. I actually never thought of it as grief at the time, to be honest, but I totally did long for that perfect love story that didn't happen, I can say.
For sure. And that is so important to say. We don't talk enough about the quiet grief that comes from dreams that never got to be, I think. It's kind of like it isn't recognized as a valid grief in a way.
And I don't want to say it to sound bitter because I'm not at all. But it did shape me, it toughened me, and also it softened me in ways I didn't expect. I had to learn how to hold both strength and exhaustion, love and fear all at once. And I think anyone who's faced a sudden life change like that knows what I mean. You mentioned it earlier also. When someone dies, there's this immediate circle of support that often kicks in. Of course, there is. That is normal and expected and beautiful. People check in on you, they bring food, they show up, and they say kind things. It's like grief is recognized and allowed.
That's true. There's a kind of built-in ritual for loss when it's death. Of course there is. I mean, it's kind of, as you say, also natural. But that doesn't mean that there isn't grief in a divorce or a breakup.
Yeah, that's it. And I don't mean that people should react in the same way after breakups and divorces. And I must say that my two best friends really were there for me and was like my partner at the time.
Yeah.
So they did everything to take care of me and were my psychologists and everything when I needed
Everything.
to talk about it. But it's just a reflection. And I think it's important to recognize the grief and pain, because when you go through a breakup or a divorce, especially maybe if it wasn't dramatic or public, it can feel incredibly lonely when you're grieving something real, something deep, but there's no ceremony for it. I mean, that would be awkward for sure. But you know what I mean. No one brings lasagna to your doorstep when your relationship ends. Or maybe they do, or maybe, I don't
Yeah.
know.
Of course that can happen. Your best friend coming over with dinner to comfort you after a breakup or a divorce.
I know. But despite that, I think that, of course, sometimes those around expect you to just move on quickly. Well, that wasn't working anyway. You're so young and so on. But the grief is still there, right? I guess not in the same way as after a loss by death, but still. Because you're not just losing a person. And now I'm thinking in general. But you might lose a future you imagine, maybe a family structure, a home, a shared language. And for me, it was, not being able to give her a family to be born into, even though it was perfect, I must say. But for us, where he moved on quicker than me and she was just still a little baby, it was a grief, I could say, because just seeing him walk off with my little baby with someone else, that was not fun, I can
No.
say. But then, yeah, this person is still there in the world, but not with you anymore, or however that relationship was. But then also you have to function like everything is fine. You have to go to work, parent your kid, pay the bills, and maybe also witness your partner, like I said, move on, finding love again. And yeah, all that.
That's such an important point. Grief isn't just about death. Of course, it isn't. It's also about change, especially sudden, unexpected change, like you said here. I mean, that wasn't the plan.
Yeah.
But also, when we talk about grief and the many phases of grief, it can be so many things. A parent who becomes mentally ill, also, a sibling struggling with addiction, a partner who develops a chronic illness, or even losing parts of yourself, like your physical abilities or independence, that can carry its own kind of grief.
Yeah.
Because these shifts shake the ground beneath you. They don't just impact your daily life, they touch your identity, your rhythm, your whole sense of self. And of course, you experience grief.
Yeah. And in those moments, your support system matters so much. Family, friends, the people who stay close when life gets heavy. Because honestly, I don't think we're meant to go through big life transitions completely alone.
Absolutely. We need people, that's true. But also, not everyone has a strong circle around them. And even when you do, the most important thing at the end of the day is to find your own strength, that quiet, steady place inside you that says, I can get through this. Because the truth is, you are the one who has to carry yourself forward. And we all have that inner strength, even if it's buried under shock or fear or exhaustion. It's there. I really believe that. And finding it, even small parts of it, that's where the shift starts, I think.
Yeah, I guess you're right. I mean, it's you have to deal with first. I think it's just maybe easier if you have someone to lean on and you have someone there for you. And looking back, I definitely leaned on the people around me. I mean, I mentioned it before, but my two best friends especially, and our mom and stepdad and my family knew. It means a lot. But I also remember the feeling of being misunderstood sometimes, like some people kind of drifted away. And maybe they got tired of hearing the same story, the same pain, which I understand, honestly. But that was my reality back then. I was navigating pregnancy with someone who just wasn't ready, not for fatherhood, not for the relationship, which I also totally understand because, as a father, maybe when that happens, you're in less of a control as the woman who kind of gets to have the last say.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
So I do understand that it could be very overwhelming.
For sure.
But yeah, I was just trying to make sense of it all. And of course, I needed to talk over and over again. So then it means the world to have someone who's there to listen, who
Of
wants
course.
to listen to you.
Yeah. You needed to say it out loud. That's part of how we process change and survive it, I think, by naming it, by being allowed to feel it and speak about it without shame. And that's why we're doing this podcast too, I guess, to remind people that whatever you're going through, you're not alone. And the strength you need, it might already be in you. Sometimes it just takes time, space, and support to find it again.
Exactly. But with what I said before, like it was too much for some people. I remember this one story that I just have to say that one of my other friends told me about this other friend, friend. Sounds confusing right there. But I had a friend who had mentioned to another friend, I should say, that she got exhausted from being around me because that was all I talked about my situation. So then she didn't really want to hang out with me as much, which I understand. But then maybe could it be smarter to tell me that, hey, listen, can we just stop talking about it? Maybe it would be better for you. Should we just go for a walk or think about something else, watch a movie or whatever? Maybe
I
that would
guess,
have been better than telling my friend that she didn't want to be around me anymore because I was talking so much.
of course. Yeah.
But it also made me think that okay, maybe it is better to not just talk about yourself. I don't know.
It's
I
tricky,
don't know. She made
I
me
guess.
insecure, I guess, now
Yeah,
that we're
of
talking
course. It
about it.
was better to be straight out and just tell you instead of telling another who told you anyway. So that's just girls, I guess.
Yeah, it was almost like I should have. She felt like I should just move on, stop talking about it. And that can make you feel so alone, even when you're surrounded by people.
Yeah, and that loneliness, that's what we don't talk enough about, I think. You're grieving something huge, but because it doesn't come with a funeral, maybe people just don't show up in the same way. And someone can be met with just silence, or as you say, irritation over hearing about your breakup over and over because it's not that visible or valid in a way.
But that's when you realize who really sees you, who sits with you without needing you to be over it. And that kind of support, it means everything. And my two best friends meant everything to me during my pregnancy and was actually there for me when my daughter was born, also. And I'm forever thankful for them.
Yeah. And I was there too.
Yes, you were.
Such a special moment, dramatic, but very special.
Yeah, you even cut the very thick umbilical cord.
I did, and I remember the midwife who lost the placenta in the floor.
Yeah, too much
That's the
information.
story, too much information.
Yes.
But I think that's something we can all take with us, the support you mentioned, your best friends showing up for you. We don't always know what someone is carrying, whether it's a breakup, a divorce, or just a quiet kind of heartbreak. It doesn't always look dramatic from the outside, but it can hurt just as much, sometimes more, because of the lack of support, also.
Yeah. And we don't need to have the perfect words as we keep repeating. Sometimes just showing up, listening, or checking in, That's more than enough. You don't have to fix anything. Just being there can make all the difference. An important reminder for sure.
So true. It's not about doing something big. It's about being human. I mean, let people talk, see them, hold space, let them repeat themselves if that's necessary, and let them be sad and messy and not okay for a while. That's how we show love in the small, consistent ways. And suddenly that can also be you sitting there on the other side, needing that support.
Yeah, that's it. And if you're the one going through it, don't be ashamed for needing support or for still talking about something people think you should be over by now. Healing takes time, and you're allowed to take up space while you figure it out.
And try to be open to the people around you, even if it's hard. Sometimes help doesn't come in the form you expected, but that doesn't mean it's not love and support. And even when you feel alone, you're likely more held than you realize. The people around you often or usually want to help you, they want to listen. You just have to let them in.
Find your inner strength. I've also thought about how breakups or divorces can feel very different depending on whether you're the one who leaves or the one who's left, who's being left. People often assume that the person who chooses to walk away is totally fine, like they made a decision, so it must be easier for them. But that's not always true, is it? Of course, that is the case for some, but still.
No, not at all. I think people forget that leaving can come from a place of deep pain too. It's often a decision that has been wrestled with for a long time. And even if it's the right choice, it can feel really lonely, I guess, because there is this silent expectation that you're the strong one now. You chose this, so you don't get to grieve. Isn't that the way it is?
I guess it is. It's like your grief is less valid somehow, like you gave up your right to feel sad because you were the one who ended it, kind of. You're the one to blame, and that can make it harder to talk about, especially if people around you don't really ask how you're doing. They're just assuming that you're moving on, while inside you might be breaking just as much, because at the end of the day, you were the one who ruined the family. It actually feels kind of harsh when you say it out loud now.
It becomes more real in a way when we say it out loud because we often talk about the one who's being left behind. But I think it's important to kind of recognize there is grief when you are the one who is ruining marriage, also. And it is so layered. There is guilt, relief, sadness, doubt, even hope all at once, I guess. And you don't always get support because people tend to gather around the one who's been left, as I said, which makes sense in some ways. But we have to remember that pain doesn't follow a clear line.
No, it really doesn't. And grief isn't just about who left whom, it's about losing a version of the life you hoped would work. And that hurts no matter how it ended.
Of course it does. I actually talked to a friend who went through this. She was the one who ended the marriage, and she said exactly that about the loneliness and how little support she got. Because often when you're the one who leaves, it's something you've been struggling with for a long time. The grief starts before the actual breakup. You've actually been mourning what's not working quietly and alone. And I've even heard of people who start a new relationship while they're still technically in the marriage.
Have you even?
I have even.
Oh,
And I think this is quite common actually.
wow. Yeah. And that is something I could never do. I mean, yeah, I'm not for
Yeah.
that. Of course, it's easy to say, and never say never, and don't judge anyone. So maybe I shouldn't have said that. I take it back.
Take it back. You can say whatever you mean or feel like.
Yeah.
But I think maybe for some it's not out of bad intentions. And I think this is important to say also. But maybe it is a way to finally find the courage to leave. It's not ideal, obviously, But I think sometimes it's a desperate attempt to escape something that's already over inside. I don't know. It's messy, of course. But grief and breakups they
Yeah,
often are messy, aren't they?
they are. And it is an important nuance, the part that the grief can actually begin before anything is said out loud. You're already mourning the relationship while trying to keep it together, or maybe just waiting for the right moment to break the silence. So by the time others hear about it, you've already lived through so much of the emotional storm alone.
And then when it finally happens, you might be met with confusion or even judgment because from the outside it looks like a sudden decision. But for the one leaving, it's often the result of maybe years of trying, hoping, and struggling in silence.
When someone does something like finding someone new before leaving, I think you're right. That's often more about survival than betrayal, or maybe it's easier then to find someone. You're more open.
I don't know.
Yeah, I don't know. It's rarely just black and white. Sometimes it's a way to make the ending feel possible, to have something or someone to hold on to while everything else feels like it's falling apart.
And while it's not always easy to understand from the outside, I think it helps to remember that people can act out of pain, not just out of selfishness or whatever. Everyone is just trying to find their way through something incredibly hard, I guess.
And that's what makes this kind of grief so complicated in these situations. It doesn't always come with permission because your marriage ended, especially not if you're the one who left. But it's still a loss and it still deserves space. But I have to say, personally, I really don't think it's a good idea jumping into something new before you actually ended your relationship or marriage. I think it just complicates everything so much more emotionally, practically, for everyone involved.
I agree. And I get that people are hurting. I get that they might feel lonely or trapped. But still, no matter how you slice it, stepping out like that, it's not something I can respect. I'm just being honest here. Infidelity or cheating like that, whether it's emotional or physical, isn't just about the act itself. It's about trust, right? And once that breaks, the ripple effects are huge. It's just totally against my values in life, I guess I can say.
Yeah, mine too. It creates more wounds, more pain for everyone. And if there are kids involved, honestly, that changes everything too. And not to be judgy, which I obviously am right now, but the last thing children need is to be introduced to someone new too quickly, especially someone stepping into a parental role before you even know if it's solid. I mean, come on. They don't need to be introduced to 2 or 3 step parents before you find the right one. They need stability, they need safety, and they need time to adjust, just like you do. And also, just be decent, be kind when you speak about your ex. And I do actually think this is very important. Even if you're angry, even if things ended badly, because your children can hear it and sense it. They
Hmm.
carry those words with them. And you don't have to pretend everything was perfect, but you can choose to keep the peace. You can choose not to involve your children in adult disagreements or hurt feelings. And I know it's hard. We both do, right? I
Yeah,
mean, we do have divorced parents.
it's a totally different story.
Yes. But yeah, I know emotions run high in breakups, but protecting your child's relationship with both parents, that is love and that's maturity. So yeah, start clean, be kind, and take your time. And that's my humble advice, anyway.
Good reflection and advices for sure. If you're unhappy in your relationship, I think the most respectful thing you can do for yourself and for the other person is to be honest always and end things first. Close that chapter, grieve it, process it, and then when you're ready, open your heart to something new. And maybe also, as you said, then you can introduce the kids if there are kids involved. Otherwise, you might just carry all the old hurt and mess into something that was maybe meant to be good. And that's not fair to you or to the new person either, or the kids. Of course, there are stories where infidelity or affairs turn into beautiful relationships for sure. I know those too. I've seen it work out. Just needed to say that.
Yeah, of course there are. And that's such an important thing to recognize also. But I think at the end of the day, starting over should come from clarity and not chaos.
Yeah, because healing takes time and dragging someone else into that in between state, not to judge, but it just complicates everything more for everyone involved. So pause and be honest and respect the ending, and then maybe move forward with integrity.
Couldn't agree more.
But back to this kind of grief we're talking about. I actually dragged my foggy brain through some reading on it, and there's a psychological term for it, ambiguous loss. It's the kind of grief where the person you're missing is still alive, but the relationship, the future, or the version of the life you imagine with them is gone. And that's what makes it so hard, I guess. There is no clear ending, maybe, no goodbye, no funeral, just a quiet kind of loss that sits with you. And most people don't even recognize it as grief, as you also said. And that's when it often turns into what researchers call disenfranchised grief. It's the kind of grief that's real and painful, but goes unacknowledged or unsupported by those around you. Because society has a pretty narrow view of what grief should look like, and if your pain doesn't fit into that box, people often don't know what to do with it, so they stay silent, or I don't know, they move on, and then you're left carrying this invisible weight, wondering if it's even okay to feel what you're feeling. But it's okay, and it matters, and all grief deserves space, I think.
Yeah, and maybe that lack of support can actually slow down the healing also.
All right.
I actually found studies showing that when people don't feel seen in their grief, it can lead to more isolation, more shame, and even physical symptoms like sleep issues, chronic stress, or anxiety. So, we really do need to take these emotional experiences seriously, even if they don't look like the traditional grief.
Yeah, and let's be honest, breakups and divorces can be traumatic, especially when kids are involved or when there's betrayal or unresolved conflict.
Mhm.
And yet we're often kind of expected to just get on with it, I feel like. I cannot relate to this fully myself, but as I said, I have for sure heard about it and know people who have gone through stuff like this. I think we all have. We mentioned our parents' divorce, and
Mhm. Yeah.
I also heard that our brain doesn't actually know the difference between social rejection and physical pain. It lights up the same pain centers in both cases. So when someone say they feel heartbroken, it's not just a figure of speech, it's actually real.
And if no one gives us space to process that, or if we feel ashamed of still being sad weeks or months later, it can really get stuck. And I think, especially for people who leave, there's this weird silence around their grief. Like, you made your bed, now you lie in it. But often leaving was the healthiest choice, not the easiest one.
And I think that's such a misunderstanding that grief only belongs to the one who's being left. We need to start recognizing that both sides can hurt deeply, just in different ways. And also that healing looks different for everyone.
And that's okay. There's no timeline or right way to grieve the end of a life chapter. Whether you were the one who stayed, the one who left, or the one who watched it all fall apart, your story matters.
And just because a relationship needed to end doesn't mean it didn't also matter. I guess you can love someone deeply and still know you can't stay.
Yeah.
And that must be a grief in itself, grieving what was and grieving what will never be.
hmm And sometimes you're grieving the potential, the life you pictured, the plans that you made, the person you hoped you could both become together. That imagined future can be the hardest thing to let go.
Totally. And when you're in that space, people might say, well, it's for the best, or you'll find someone else. But that, I feel like, skips the part where your whole identity might be shifting, especially after a long relationship. You're not just losing a partner, you're losing shared routines, inside jokes, extended family, and even friends sometimes.
And who are you after that? I think that's something people don't talk enough about. The identity crisis that can follow. Who am I now when I'm no longer someone's partner? Who am I on a Saturday morning when there's no shared coffee or laundry or arguing over what series to binge watch? Mm.
Yeah, that quietness can be so loud. I can totally relate. And I guess now, after we talked about this, the feelings and emotions can be kind of the same after a divorce. I mean, my husband died and I had those experiences after my loss. But I really do think that our brain and the way we react is kind of the exact same. That's a natural way to react somehow, despite the fact that those two experiences doesn't totally match, despite the fact that I didn't choose this,
Yeah,
you
that's the
know?
thing. Yeah. Yeah, and you're actually spot on, like you said before, because research shows that the brain doesn't really distinguish much between physical pain and emotional pain. A study by Naomi Eisenberger at UCLA found that when people experience social rejection or loss, the same areas of the brain light up as when they experience physical pain.
So when we say something feels like a punch in the gut or like your heart is literally breaking, we're not just being dramatic. This is actual science.
Exactly. I didn't know. It's real. Emotional pain registers in the body, just like physical pain. And that's why grief, whether from death or divorce, can be so exhausting. You're not just sad, your whole system is under stress.
Yeah, and that really makes sense to me. I remember feeling totally drained, like I'd run a marathon I never signed up for or something. And even the smallest things like making dinner or folding clothes felt like such a huge task.
And then there's the identity shift too. Psychologists call it a role exit. It's when someone has to leave behind a social identity, like being a spouse or even a caregiver, and then navigate who they are without it. It can be really disorientating.
Yeah, and if you're not getting support from others because they think you should be fine or you chose this, then you're dealing with all of that grief and identity shift alone, and that's heavy.
So maybe the takeaway here is all endings carry grief and they all deserve space to be felt and processed, regardless of how or why they happened.
Exactly. And whether it was chosen, forced, expected, or sudden, I mean, loss is loss. And healing starts when we stop comparing and start understanding. And it takes time to rebuild, to find a rhythm again, especially when the grief comes in waves. It often does. One moment you're okay, the next you're crying in the car because you passed one bakery you always went to together or something. It sneaks up on you.
Yeah, totally. And I also think we have to mention that for some people, the grief after a breakup or divorce isn't about losing love, it's about losing safety or identity or even control. And that is valid too. It might not be about heartbreak, but it's still loss.
That is so true. And this is why we can't rank grief. It doesn't matter if it was just a 6 month relationship or 20 years of marriage, I guess. If it mattered to you, it's worthy of space and also care.
Yeah, of course, it's worthy of space for you.
Yeah.
And let's be honest, even in relationships that weren't good for us, the ending can be painful because we're not just grieving the relationship, we're grieving the version of ourselves we were in it. And sometimes we have to grieve the person we tried to be for someone else, also, maybe. I don't know.
There is so much self reflection that comes with endings, I think. So, if you're listening to this and going through a breakup or a divorce, whether you left or got left, your grief is valid. You're not being dramatic, you're just human, and we see you.
And you're not alone. Even if it feels that way, there are so many others navigating the same storm quietly, privately, and bravely. Maybe someone even loudly. And we're sending lots of love to all of you.
So, yeah, how do we begin to move on from something like that? Because let's be honest, even if it was the right thing to do, rebuilding can feel like you're standing in the ruins of your own life. Where do you even start?
Hmm. And sometimes people expect you to just bounce back, like you're free now, just enjoy your single life. But healing takes time and work. It's not just about getting over someone, it's about coming back to yourselves. Healing doesn't mean that you never think about the person again or that you don't miss the good parts. It just means that over time the pain softens and you start building something new, not going back to who you were before, but growing into someone different, maybe even stronger.
Yeah, and for some, healing also means learning to set new boundaries or reconnecting with friends you might have drifted from or trying something you always wanted but never felt allowed to do, also, maybe. And there's actually a term for this too. It's called post traumatic growth. It doesn't mean the trauma wasn't real, it means that because of what we've gone through, we sometimes find a deeper appreciation for life or a clearer sense of our values.
That's so beautiful and important because we often only talk about loss as the end of something, but sometimes it's the beginning of something new, even if it takes time to get there.
So maybe the question isn't when will I be over this, but how can I take care of myself while I heal? What part of me deserve gentleness right now?
And that's such a good place to start because healing isn't linear and no one gets to rush you through it. And if you're listening and going through this right now, you're not behind. You're just human and you're doing better than you think.
Correct.
And speaking of healing, it's not just emotional, is it? There's grief and illness too. The grief of losing parts of yourself or the life you once had. I think that's something people don't talk about enough.
No, they really don't. I've seen it up close, first with my late husband and now again with my boyfriend. And they've both been through things that completely changed how they move in the world, things that limit them physically, socially, and emotionally too. And there is so much grief in that. Not just the fear of dying, but the grief of not being able to live the way you used to, the grief of losing your job, maybe, your colleagues, your whole work identity, and your part in society, really, your identity as you knew it from before.
And I have a friend that's going through that now too. She has a health condition that has changed her in many ways, like things you don't think about in the daily life, all of a sudden turn your entire life upside down just because of this. And that slow loss of independence or identity, even, it's like mourning a version of yourself while still being alive. And I think many don't realize how deep that runs.
Yeah, and the thing is, most of us don't appreciate our health until something happens, until someone we love gets sick, maybe, until we do. But good health, that's a luxury, a gift we often take for granted. If you woke up today without pain, with energy, with mobility, that's something to be deeply grateful for, actually.
It really is. And I did talk to my friend about this the other day too, that sometimes something needs to happen before you can appreciate those things.
Yeah, that's a
Yeah.
fact.
And we talk a lot about gratitude here, but maybe we should also be practicing awe for the everyday things, like being able to go for a walk, cook a meal, or take a deep breath without effort. Do all the thing we want to do, really, because for some, those things aren't a given anymore.
Yeah, and that's where it hits, I guess. The things we take for granted are the very things others pray for. And seeing that living with someone who is sick, it changes you. It changes what you value. You stop chasing so much and start appreciating more. And that is at least one positive outcome in all this.
Maybe that's one of the lessons in it all, that we can live more fully now, not in a pressured, make every second count kind of way, but just with a little more awareness, more softness. And for those going through illness or supporting someone who is, you're not alone. There's grief in that journey too. And there's space for that. I mean, you have to let yourself grieve that too, because it is indeed a grief that is valid. Totally.
But also, you cannot let that grief swallow you. You have to let yourself notice the light that still breaks through, also. But it's okay to feel both, of course.
Yeah, and if you're healthy today, don't waste it. Maybe live a little extra for those who can't right now.
Beautifully said, and so true.
And as we talked about before in another context and touched into here also, we have this invisible grief of being next of kin, the one who is on the side, the kind that doesn't always get noticed. It's quieter, less visible, but it's still there. And this has been your life for the past 11 to 12 years, really?
Yeah, this is where I have my experience from, and that's so important to address and talk about. We have talked about it before for sure, but when you're the one standing beside, supporting, holding everything together, it can feel like your own pain doesn't have a place. People ask how your partner is doing, your parent, your child, or whoever, but not always how you're holding up.
Exactly. And you might don't want to take up space with your own sadness either, because you're not the one who's sick. That doesn't mean that you're not grieving too. And I guess you're grieving the shift in roles, the fear of what's coming, the everyday life that's suddenly different now.
Yeah, it's a lonely grief sometimes, for sure. You're watching someone you love struggle, you're scared, you're exhausted, and yet you keep showing up, you keep functioning because you have to, and it's the only thing that matters. But inside, something is slowly breaking for sure. It's kind of consuming in a way, and I think more people need to recognize that. Next of kin carry a heavy emotional load, and it's not just support, it's love, of course, it's stress, it's grief, and often guilt all rolled into one.
And you deserve space for all that. Just because your pain isn't center stage doesn't mean it's less real. So if you're listening and you're the one that's beside someone who's sick, your grief is valid, your exhaustion is valid, and your love is seen.
We see you and we know it's hard. And if no one has said it to you lately, thank you for being there, for carrying love in a time of so much uncertainty and unknown. That matters more than words can say. I know. And your role is of huge value for those you care for. That's important to say also. So thank you again for taking that role. It might just be the thing that saves your person from going under.
That is truly powerful to think about, isn't it?
Yeah.
But I must say, I sometimes wonder, can we really prepare for this kind of grief? Prepare for life to shift. If your life, mostly uncomplicated, mostly healthy, should we even try to imagine what this would be like? Is that a helpful thing to do, you think?
That is such a good question. And honestly, I don't think you can fully prepare because when illness or loss hits, it doesn't just touch one part of your life, it shifts everything, your routines, your thoughts, your identity, even your relationships. And no matter how many books you read or stories you've heard, when it happens to you, it's personal and raw. And I don't think you can prepare for that. I have tried for sure. It wasn't intentional, but I became this hypochondriac, and that is not helpful in any way.
No, it's not. And that is very understandable, though, that you have turned into this
Psychopath?
hypochondriac. No, stop. But it's not very helpful. But I think it's like one of those things you can only truly understand when you're in it. But at the same time, maybe it is helpful to talk about it, which you are good at, and we're doing it here too.
Yeah.
So when you call me and you say you feel like you're sick, this and that, I tell you you're not.
That's
Go
valid.
see the doctor. It's valid. It's a valid feeling.
It
Get
is.
it out.
Get it out. Get it
Yeah.
checked.
Yes. Anyways, we should acknowledge that life can change in a second, right? Not in a fearful doom and gloom kind of way, but in a real way.
Yeah, like we're not saying walk around paranoid or expect the worst. That is not helpful for anyone. But maybe live with a little more presence, a little more gratitude. Care about the people you have in your life and be present because honestly, health is not a guarantee. Neither is time.
And maybe the preparation isn't about being ready for loss. Maybe it's about building strong connection now, being kind now, telling people you love them now.
That's exactly it. Because when the hard times come, and they will come, I guess, one way or another, what we build in the good times is what carries us. The relationships, the memories, the way we cared for each other and ourselves.
So maybe we can't prepare for grief itself, but we can live in a way that makes grief feel less lonely when it comes. And that is something.
For sure it is. So I think the real takeaway here is grief isn't always about death. It's also about change, about losing parts of life as we knew it, whether it was through illness, separation, or just a slow unfolding of time, also.
Yeah, we touched on so many forms of grief in this episode: grief and breakups, grief when you're the one who leaves, the silent grief of being next of kin, and the grief of losing your own health or a different future than you had imagined. And honoring all of that, no matter what shape it takes, is part of honoring life. Because when we allow ourselves to feel the weight of what's been lost, we also make space for what's still there and what's still possible.
Yeah, and whether it's this or that, these are all real and they deserve recognition. And remember, life after loss, whatever the loss, can still hold meaning and beauty and even joy.
You know, I look back at that time when I was pregnant and all the uncertainty around my relationship or situationship, maybe I should call it instead. And the fact that I couldn't see how my future would look like. And I remember how scary that felt. I was completely shattered and afraid. Everything felt like it was falling apart, and I truly believed I had ruined everything, not just for me, but also for my daughter and maybe the life I thought that she deserved. You know, with two happily married parents. But somehow, over time, that grief gave space to something new, a different version of life, one I never saw coming, but one that turned out to be such a blessing. Me and her have this incredible bond that I truly believe is because of this. I felt like with her, after I had her, I was stronger than ever.
It's beautifully said. And I think that's one of the hardest lessons to trust that the pain doesn't mean we're broken forever. As you said, it turned out to be a blessing
Yeah.
despite it all. And for me, losing my husband felt like the ultimate uncertainty. I hated not knowing what life would look like. It taught me to live with uncertainty. And now, with my boyfriend, even though he's living with cancer, I've found the strength, this strange kind of peace, gratitude, even because I remind myself, and he reminds me every day, that life can be heavy and beautiful at the same time. I mean, he is so calm, he's steady, he's joy, even in the middle of all the hard things.
That is so powerful. That love still exists after loss, and that joy can exist alongside grief.
Yeah, and after my loss and trauma, I found my resting heart rate again. It exists, beautiful things can still happen.
So, wherever you are right now, whether you're grieving, healing, adjusting, or just trying to understand your own story, please be kind to yourself. You're not behind, you're not broken, you're human, and you're doing better than you think.
And a gentle reminder, appreciate what you can while you can. Take the walk, call your friend, notice the sky and all the beauty, because life here and now really is the most precious thing.
It is. And we'll keep showing up here, talking about the hard stuff, so that maybe, just maybe, you feel a little bit less alone.
We're right here with you, sharing and caring.
Mm.
black and white. We were talking in English, yeah, that ain't right. Two Norwegian sisters miles apart, but that dream lit a fire, put a mic to the heart. Katrine's in the States, Nina's back home. Two voices, one mission through the microphone. Grief and life, the highs and the lows. We hit record, uh-oh, where the file go? Oh, we fumble, we stumble, but baby we shine. Lost the intro, never mind. Wi-Fi shaky, cables crossed, but our hearts stay strong, no moment lost. From a dream to the mic, now the world can hear. Two sisters telling truths with a laugh and a tear. We live, we learn, we sip, we sigh. Talking love, talking lost, let the echoes fly. Grief walks in, pulls up a chair, says I'll stay a while, yeah, life ain't fair. But we mix it with laughter, a toast in hand, finding light where the dark still stands. Ba-da-da-boo-doo, is this thing on? Mic's on mute, oh well, move along. Ba-ba-dee, ba-ba-da, take two. Oops, too late, let's laugh it through. From a dream to the mic, now the world can hear. Two sisters telling truths with a laugh and a tear. We live, we learn, we sip, we sigh. Talking love, talking lost, let the echoes fly. So plug in, lean in, let's take our time. No script, no filters, just rhythm and rhyme. We're here, we're now, we're in our prime. Two sisters, one dream, on the mic.